Morning, everybody. As Nisha said, thank you very much for making it to this event today. As I stand here after having looked at the BRRs for almost last 5 years and the IRBI for last 3 years, I have mixed thoughts about what is happening vis-a-vis the corporate sector and regulations and so on and so forth as a whole. I'll try and club my thoughts into two broad areas. One is on the report itself, very, very briefly and very broadly, and how do we actually move forward, some thoughts on that. On the report itself, the key takeaways that I have at the very broad top level is that it looks like business as usual. Nothing much really has changed definitely not in the last 3 years or 4 to 5 years that we have been tracking the BRRs. Why I say business as usual? Because some of the critical parameters, if you look at inclusion and if you look at community and if you look at how businesses could change society and be a catalyst in changing society, what is disappointing is that while on the CSR front, businesses seems to be doing okay because it is mandated, but on the community as a stakeholder, nobody seems to be bothered. Community is not considered as a stakeholder or as part of their core thinking. That's not come in the last 4 to 5 years that we've been scrutinizing the data. It is also not surprising. Probably it is, it's now fairly data shows that businesses seems to be doing better or slightly better on areas that are legally mandated, not that are left to be a good thing to do or voluntary. So does that call for regulation? I'm not sure. It is probably a combination of both, but the data does tell us that it is when legally there is a provision or publicly there is a pressure, as in some improvement in women's area, because that's in the air and social movements and women's movements have fought for it. There seem to be some improvement in that. And in terms of sectors, the most disappointing sector is, I'm sure you will all guess it right as well, is the financial and the banking sector. Not much need to be said about that, but if you look at the 15 financial sector, banking sector companies that are in the top 100 listed companies, all of them are doing pretty bad on all the indicators. All the 5 areas that we have looked over the years, they're doing fairly bad. And they're least bothered about what businesses do with the monies that they lend. And this is a sector that can have significant impact on how businesses are done in this country. And yet, they are the worst performing. Another sector probably that is worth looking out for is the pharma sector. It has immense potential. It has huge potential. It has seen exponential growth in the last few years, and yet it's not doing that well, and definitely not doing enough in areas that they need to set standards rather than fall in line when a regulation or a law is made. So this is a sector that will touch lives of every single citizen of this country. Every single person in the country will be touched by this sector and how the sector is done, how the sector performs, and yet not significant voluntary standards or coming forward in terms of setting good practices. Now, I also think that this report needs to be, it is not in isolation, and it needs to be read together with what is happening around the country and other reports like what Nisha was saying, the Oxfam's inequality report, or on the other hand, reports like the ground level panel, which Praxis has been doing. You need to read them together, and once you read them together, I think things starts to fall in place. When you look at what is happening around, you see that it's very clear that the regulators and governments are looking the other way. When businesses indulge in rogue practices, the governments and regulators seem to be looking the other way. Whereas when it comes to farmers or the poor, it's looking with a microscope. Or ordinary citizen. In fact, just yesterday I got a call from my village officer from my ancestral village saying that there is an overdue of some 2,000 rupees of BSNL bill, which my father, it was in my father's name who passed away 3 years ago, and it has come for revenue recovery. Which means that I will be not able to do any transaction, any revenue transaction, without settling that bill of 2,000 rupees. So it's not like we don't have the systems. We do have systems, but it is applied only in cases like this. 11,000 or 70,000 or whatever the numbers are, they look the other way around, other way. What is also, and I think if this sort of BSNL kind of due diligence was done, we would probably be a high-income country by now. We don't have to struggle to get into the middle-income category. Having said that, I think we should also read this together with another kind of looking the other way, which is issues of poverty, issues of poor, which is what all our ground-level panels, which Praxis has done, shows that the government looks the other way when it comes to issues of poverty, issues of poor. One of the participants of ground level panel is a panel of people living in poverty come together to negotiate, discuss, dialogue on issues of policy and matters that affect their lives. One of them said, is it that the government does not know what our issues are? No, they know, but they choose to look the other way. Now, this two combination of looking the other way of daylight loot and looking the other way of issues of poverty, that combination is a disastrous combination. And inequality reports like Oxfam's, the graph is, we know which way it will go. Now, moving forward, I think one obvious one is that the government bodies, the regulators, businesses themselves should start looking at BRRs more seriously and giving it the importance. I'm not saying that BRR is the best one. As the NVG, as the broad framework, they should start looking at how do we actually start taking this seriously. I think that's extremely important. I also think that it is important that this report or this data should not remain just amongst businesses or just a few. It should reach as many stakeholders as possible. It should reach out to women's movement. It should reach to students. It should reach to consumers, all stakeholders that matter. And that is when I think things will start to change. And I was pretty impressed by what Anand Mahindra said at Davos. He said that it is not industry leaders who will really make changes, not just industry leaders. It is when campuses start protesting, campuses start being alive, that is when change will start happening. So therefore, I think it is important that this data reaches a wider audience that will shape, will force things to change. The students, the movements, and all of them. And we should definitely make an effort. We will certainly make an effort to make sure that this reaches. Last but not least, I think businesses that care should be bold enough to now, in the scenario, in the environment that is around us now, businesses that care should definitely be bold enough to stand up and stand apart and lead a way forward for responsible business in the country. Thank you very much.